I will ask you this question that was posed to me on the mailbag this week. Would you rather the Panthers shock the world and go to the playoffs this year, even if it means a wild card round exit? Or would you like for them to once again draft in the top 5 or top 10? I just don't understand.
You are Locked On Panthers, your daily Carolina Panthers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, as always, Julian Council, talking Carolina Panthers with you every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Your team every day. That's our motto here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Subscribe or follow the show for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. And be sure to follow me, Julian Council, on Twitter at Julian Council, because on Wednesdays, like today, for the rest of the regular season and hopefully, fingers crossed, the playoffs, I'll be answering your weekly Wednesday mailbag questions. All you got to do is either at me or DM me. And if you'd like to, you can click the follow button as well at Julian Council to get those questions in for next week's edition of the show. Today's episode of Locked On Panthers is brought to you by FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com to get started today. And we will get started with the mailbag momentarily, but there was some surprising news to come out of Panthers camp on Tuesday afternoon as they have waived veteran pass rusher K'Lavon Chaisson, something that I certainly did not see coming, and I'm sure you probably did not see coming, as the Panthers are days away from their week 1 opener on the road in New Orleans against the Saints. K'Lavon Chaisson came over this offseason after the Panthers signed DJ Wonnum, and prior to the Jadeveon Clowney signing, he was always someone who was going to be brought in to be a rotational pass rusher along with DJ Johnson in his second year and behind Wonnum and whoever they were going to be able to sign as their starter, which they were able to do by getting Clowney. And after Wonnum was injured and has not been able to participate at all, he's currently on PUP for the first 4 weeks of the season. No idea when he'll be back. He's eligible to return for the Week 5 matchup on the road in Chicago. Don't feel like that is something that's likely to happen, just considering the fact that he has not been available all offseason. We have not been given a timeline there. Amari Barno also on PUP with the torn ACL suffered last year against Green Bay in Week 16, and he's someone where he's pretty far away. That's what Dave Canales said over a week ago. The Panthers are sitting in a situation where they got a pretty light edge rusher room, and with Chaisson no longer here, it's Clowney, it's DJ Johnson, it's Eku Leota, and it's Jamie Sheriff, who they just picked up with waivers last week. Four edge rushers. They exited camp and the preseason with 4. They added another one, and now they're back down to 4. And I have said this, and it still is very true to this point, at least in my opinion. I'm sure a lot of opinions across the NFL. As currently constructed, this is the worst edge rushing group in the NFL. With Clowney being healthy, with DJ Johnson being healthy, Eku Leota being healthy, and Jamie Sheriff being healthy. This is not ideal, and that's why it's all the more puzzling that K'Lavon Chaisson, a former first-round pick who has been a bust and now being waived by the Panthers, only goes even further with that bust narrative that comes from Jacksonville. It's not really a narrative, it's just a fact. The guy was drafted in the first round. There were high expectations from him in Jacksonville. He did not live up to those expectations. Therefore, they moved on. The Panthers thought, all right, Todd Wash, you were the DC when y'all drafted K'Lavon. Maybe you can come in here, even though you're not going to be his position coach, and work in this scheme, and he can be better. And, well, did not work out to where week 1, he's on our roster, at least for now. Let's keep that important. Reading Alex Zeitlo from the Charlotte Observer, he noted this, that the move saves the Panthers $2 million in cap space according to Over the Cap, and saddles him with $500,000 in dead money. If he was on the team during week 1, this weekend, his base salary of $1.12 million would have been fully guaranteed, which is not a ton of money. It's not a high cap hit, but still would have been a guaranteed salary, as he's accrued more than 4 years in the NFL and thus is a vested veteran. The Panthers now have $10.6 million of cap space when I look at overthecap.com. So at least for now, K'Lavon Chaisson is not on the roster. I didn't know the Panthers were in a situation where they were needing a less experience at the edge rusher spot heading into week one, but that's where they're at. It's possible after week one, he comes back, has a lower salary, even though $1.12 million guaranteed is not that much. The cap hit was not that high. They've moved on. He did not impress me at all during training camp or the preseason. I mean, neither really did DJ Johnson. And Eku Leota did in that first game. We haven't seen Clowney. And I know Jamie Sheriff apparently in Seattle had 3 sacks to lead that team during their preseason games. I'm caught off guard. We'll see what they do. The Panthers can, of course, look at other players who are in practice squads elsewhere. I've seen people bandy about the name Carl Lawson, who did have a workout early on in training camp here in Carolina. The Panthers decided that they were not going to go in that direction. They did bring in Kamoko Toure, who only lasts about a week before being placed on IR and then later on having an injury settlement as he is no longer here in Carolina. There has been no movement from Yannick Ngakoue. I don't even think he's on a team right now in the NFL. I don't think the Panthers, with that $10 million of cap space, is wanting to give half of it up for Yannick Ngakoue. Now, they can, of course, get creative with Brant Tillis now taking over as their cap and contract guy. And I imagine if they want to go that direction, they'll get it done and it'll work out for them. But will it work out for the player? That is Yannick Ngakoue. Now, going back to Carl Lawson, he is on, I forget whose practice squad. Understand this. Teams every week are allowed to protect 4 players on their practice squad. Anyone who's left unprotected can be signed by an opposing team. And yes, they're going to that other team. I don't know if Carl Lawson is protected or unprotected. If he's unprotected, that's possibly someone the Panthers will go after. It's not like he impressed the last couple of years in New York. He got there, tore his Achilles, came back the next season, and was fine for a player coming off a serious injury. Then last year had a back injury and was phased out and barely was a part of that rotation. Could he help the Panthers? Would be experience. Better than what K'Lavon Chaisson's done so far in his career. I just don't really know what they can realistically do at this point that's going to elevate this group to the point where they're not going to be the worst edge rushing group in the NFL this season. I don't see it unless DJ Johnson just breaks out. Leota looks like he did that week one game against the Patriots backups, and Jamie Sheriff continues to be a game wrecker like he was against backups there in Seattle in the preseason, and maybe they add somebody else. This is just going to be what it's going to be this year, y'all. And I don't want to be a Debbie Downer or negative. It's just reality. This was the worst pass rushing group last year when they had Brian Burns and Frankie Louvu. Those guys are now gone. You brought in Clowney, played well last year in Baltimore, but can he carry the load this season with Leota, Johnson, and Sheriff being his complementary pieces and having no idea if and when DJ Wonnum's going to come back and what Amari Barno coming off an ACL is going to provide to this team? This was stunning to me. We'll see if it's just one of those things where they want to avoid paying Chaisson that kind of money for somebody they weren't totally in love with. They were in love with him enough to keep him on the roster up until this point. But maybe they just didn't like him at that number and they bring him back next week. And even if they do that, I still wouldn't have high expectations for him and this group as a whole. So that was surprising news. Come out on Tuesday. K'Lavon Chaisson, no longer Carolina Panther for now and maybe for good. We'll see how the Panthers address that position moving forward here as they prepare for the week one matchup on the road against the Saints. But it's Wednesday, which means the weekly Wednesday mailbag. It also means being asked whether I'd rather watch this team lose and get a top 5 pick or if I'd rather watch this team win, even if it means losing in the first round of the playoffs. I just have never in my life thought someone would ask me something like that. We'll talk about that here in just a moment on Locked On Panthers. You've heard me talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Well, we have something a little different for you today. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel any time for free. And y'all, week one, it's here. Football on Thursday. On Friday, and all day on Sunday. If you don't live here in the Carolinas, I would suggest you go ahead. If you're in a legal betting state, bet $5, get some winnings in either on Thursday or Friday night. If you want to bet on college football, do that. Win some money. 3 weeks free to watch your Panthers and to watch all these games out of market on Sunday afternoon. All you got to do is just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to download America's #1 sportsbook. The regular season is here, and it is Wednesday, which means the Weekly Wednesday Mailbag going on for the next 18 weeks at minimum. Hopefully 19, 20, 21, 22, dare I say 23 weeks if this team can go to the Super Bowl. And man, 23 weeks, that is a long, long season for those teams that make it to that final game on Super Bowl Sunday. And fingers crossed, prayers up that this team can do it. I don't think they will. Don't think they necessarily can, but it is, sure, it's possible. Crazier things have happened. I actually don't think a team has ever been the worst team in the NFL and come back to next year and gone to the Super Bowl. But why not make history? Made history last year as the first 2-15 team. Let's make history this year as, I'm guessing, the first team to be the worst and then go to be the best. Let's see what can happen. All right, let's get into it. Weekly Wednesday Mailbag here on Locked On Panthers. 2 questions start off here just about fan expectations. I put this out on Twitter at Julian Council, where you can obviously at me or DM me to send in your questions for next week's Wednesday Mailbag. I asked people, where's your head at going into this game? Because I like to know just what this fan base is thinking. I want to be able to speak to y'all and understand where y'all are coming from. Of course, I grew up here in Charlotte, grew up going to games with my dad in Section 119. I was fortunate enough to go to a plenty of those playoff games at home. Also went to the Super Bowl back in 2003, technically I guess 2004, with my dad down in Houston. So I'm one of you. Even if you want to get mad at me sometimes for not lying to you blatantly and telling you everything you want to hear, I'm going to tell you what you need to hear. And what I think is my truth. And maybe the truth. But I'm a Charlottean. Love this city. Love what this team has done for my hometown. Love y'all. Appreciate the support. So I really want to know what y'all's thought process is. And this stems off of really these next 2 questions that I got asked, but really the first question that I was asked by someone who I didn't get their name on Twitter, but this is what they asked me. They say that they've been a long-time Panther fan, at least since they've been around. So the last 30 years, they've told me right here in this question, we've had our highs and lows, but I'm ready for this low streak to end. Understand, they're ready for this low streak to end. That said, would you rather see the Panthers win 5 to 6 games, showing improvement as a whole with growth in that it factor from Bryce Young, or would I rather watch them shock everyone by making the playoffs, knowing full well they'd be done in the wild card? This person tells me personally, I take the former, which should give us a top 10, maybe top 5 pick next year. My response to them on Twitter was, that is insane. And my response to them here on the show is, that is insane. And what I'm telling you, who's either watching on YouTube or listening, wherever you listen to your favorite podcast, that is insane. You would rather this team suck again, draft in the top 5 or top 10, and put your hopes in a 21, 22-year-old player coming out of college, than watch them go to the playoffs for the first time since 2017 and give you real tangible hope by winning football games. This is why I hate the NFL draft. This mentality of, well, let's not win games, let's get a draft pick. Because that provides hope more than actually winning on the field. What is the point of the 17 Sundays that we are guaranteed to get to watch this team if you're not even sitting here wanting them to achieve greatness? And I guess losing in a wild card round is not greatness, but for David Tepper's Carolina Panthers, it is. Why would you not want them to win? And I said this to them. They responded saying, haha, when you put it that way, you have a point. Yeah, I have a point. The point is to win. You play to win the game. I just can't believe that this is where people are. I get it. Tepper has warped your brain. He has beaten us into the ground. He has thrown drinks on it. I get it. I understand it's been rough, but that is the craziest thing and the dumbest, no offense, sports fan mentality that exists. The draft. Let's get a draft pick instead of win games, go to the playoffs. It's different if you're going to go like 5-12 instead of 4-13. Okay, I guess I hear you there. Makes a little bit more sense. But we're talking about 5-12 versus 10-7. What? So they said, you have a good point. When you put it that way, they said, obviously, rather see us win. I guess I'm saying that the former is a realistic scenario. Is the latter even possible? No, the latter, yes, it is possible. Is it going to happen? I don't think so. Further, would it be worth it to win our division, make the playoffs, win on paper, at least, or the roster barely competes with the teams inside our own division? Yes, it would be worth it to win the division. It would be worth it to be able to build off of the worst season, get a head coach who no one else wanted in Dave Canales, a guy in Bryce Young you spent a ton of picks on and gave up DJ Moore for to show you he is the guy. And I would think to get a defense that looks good, JC Horn staying healthy, continue to see Derek Brown ball out, Shaq Thompson maybe get to stick around, and receivers outside of your top two making plays, a good run game, a good offensive line. Like all those things would happen if they were a playoff team. Why would you not want that to happen over a top 5 pick? I think James Pierce Jr. is great out of Tennessee. Charlotte kid, going to get to see him this Saturday when he plays against State here at Bank of America Stadium. If the Panthers are in the top 5, that's the kind of guy they're going to want to get. I just would rather them win games this year and not even be in position to get him than to lose games and be in position to get him, even though I think that's what's going to happen. Lord help me. Give me strength. Give me patience. I'm trying. Russell, he asked me, am I stupid? Yes. No, Russell, you're not. Am I stupid and or overly desperate for getting excited for the season after that one drive versus Buffalo? It showed more creativity and effectiveness than anything we saw last year. But is it one drive and one preseason game against few, if any, starters? Yes, that's exactly what it is. One drive and one preseason game against backups. But you're right. They were effective. They moved down the field, and they did something this team barely did last year, and that was score a touchdown. Bryce Young was upright. He hit all of his receivers. The tight ends were involved. They ran the football. That is what I'd rather hear, even if Russell's going overboard and thinking, oh, man, we scored against the Bills number 2s. Super Bowl or bust. That I would rather have that kind of insanity than the insanity of, would you rather win 5 or 6 games, which is probably a more realistic scenario, or shock the world and go to the playoffs, even if you're going to lose in the wild card? Yeah, give me the fun of the playoffs. Let me work on MLK Day weekend. Otherwise, I'll just go on a trip like I like to do typically because this team's not around. Make me stay home. Okay, let's take a quick pause. We'll come back and we'll talk about the wide receivers and which NFC South rivals I hate the most here in just a moment on the Locked On Panthers. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered, and they had me covered recently. I had my daytime running light go out. Try to replace the bulb. Instead, the old bulb that was in the socket was corroded. So I went on eBay, searched that socket, got it in a couple days' time. With over 122 million parts, your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. While the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. All right, back to it. The Weekly Wednesday Mailbag. Going to woosah. Take some deep breaths. Calm down. The season's here, so let's all smile. Okay. Over to Alex. Got a couple of questions about the wide receivers. Alex and David's questions are kind of like similar, and so is Jeremy. We'll start off with Alex. He asked me, we've seen very little from Xavier Legette in training camp and preseason compared to other rookies like Jadeveon Sanders and Trevin Wallace. Is it too optimistic to assume that he gets a good amount of usage during Sunday's game against the Saints team, whose defense and corners are towards the top half of the league? David saying, knowing that Xavier Legette is Panthers wide receiver 3/4 heading into the season, what does he have to do, in your opinion, make himself worthy of a first-round pick? Now, starting off with Alex. So Xavier Legette, since he's gotten here to Charlotte, has barely been healthy. He had the hamstring issue back in the spring during OTAs, and then later on in mandatory minicamp where the Panthers were very cautious with him, and they said if this was a regular season, they would have him out there. And that was a trend, as we've seen them be cautious with Ian Thomas, with Tommy Trimble, and several other players who have had those soft tissue injuries throughout training camp and in the spring. He comes to training camp, has a bad day, his own words, at the start of training camp, day one. And I love the fact that he was self-critical. He was like, I got to be better, and that he was willing to work on it. Love that mentality, because you got to be self-driven. Can't have coaches yelling at you. Can't have exterior motivations. Got to be right here in that chest. People always talk about having that dog in them. Well, do you have any heart? That's what you got to have first and foremost. Then, of course, have that dog. And I think Xavier Legette at least showed that last year at South Carolina when he showed in the NFL. He's got to be healthy. Had the foot injury, and he missed those first 2 preseason games, and he played in that final preseason game against Buffalo, was barely out there with the ones, had an opportunity with the 2s, and dropped the ball. That was the only target that we saw from him all preseason long. Going back to what I saw during training camp, even before he got injured, what I saw afterwards, and what we saw in the preseason, why would you be optimistic that he's going to get a good amount of usage when he's always been like the 5th receiver, even when TMJ was here? The guys who are getting a lot of usage on Sunday are Deontay Johnson, who is here to be their top receiver, Adam Thielen, who's their top receiver last year, and yes, Jonathan Mingo. Those are the top 3 guys Legette will play. Whether the Saints had the best corners or the worst corners, he was going to play. Is he going to get a ton of usage based on what we've seen? And in fact, he's missed a lot of time. I'm going to say no. That would not be my expectation. Could it happen? Certainly. I just think he's behind the 8 ball. If I'm proven wrong, totally fine. I'll sit here. I'll celebrate. You guys can throw tomatoes at me like you like to do. I don't think he's going to get a lot of usage, and I don't think that should be the expectation right away. Like, let's just bring it down just a little bit. He has time, which leads me to what David asked me, saying, what does he need to do to prove he's worthy of a first-round pick? Now, I didn't think he was a first-round receiver. I was very honest with y'all way back in April. 1 season, that's awesome. I don't buy into those guys who just are a one-hit wonder in college. Now, there's been other people who have had success as one-hit wonders, like Joe Burrow was a one-hit wonder. Now he's turned out to be a pretty doggone good player. But with Xavier Legette, his situation, we went over it ad nauseum back in the spring. I was skeptical, and I remain skeptical right now. I hope it works out, because I love the guy. His personality is golden. I think he's fun, and I hope he can make it fun on the field to watch this team actually go out there and win games. But in my opinion, what he's got to do to prove himself worthy of first-round pick, well, I guess I never felt like he was worthy, but since they already got him as a first-rounder, even though he would have been a second round had he just stayed there, but it basically would have been a first-rounder anyway, just not technically, he's just got to prove that he's going to be one of their top 2 receivers. That's what he's got to do. He needs to be a guy down the line who can at least get 800, 900, 1,000 yards receiving consistently and be healthy, be on the field, be a difference maker. That's what he's got to be able to do. Show that speed, show that physicality that he showed last year at South Carolina with Spencer Rattler throwing in the ball. Like, that's what I need to see. And he doesn't have to prove himself this year. The Panthers are not going into the season saying, Xavier Legette, we need you to be a stud. Dave, talk about show us that you're ready, and we'll put you out there when you're ready. I don't think he's ready right now. What they want to see this season is Deontay Johnson get the ball and do something with it. They want to see Adam Thielen making plays. They want to see Chuba Hubbard running the ball and getting downhill, that offensive line mashing folks, protecting Bryce. It's not about Xavier Legette this season. I get it. First round pick. You want to have hope in something. I talked about this yesterday. What can restore hope? Seeing some of those younger guys develop and to show that, oh, okay, Panthers might have something here. And I think they possibly could have something in Xavier Legette. I just don't think this season they have to see it, as there's other guys who are in position and who have been healthier that the Panthers, I think, are counting on a lot more than Legette this year. Now, Jeremy asked me a question also about the wide receivers, asking, how would you define a successful season among our wide receivers? Last year, you could comfortably say you were happy with the production of one of them, that being Adam Thielen. But with the additions to the offense this year, as well as progression of guys like Bryce Young and Jonathan Mingo, it's a room full of guys of promise. At the same time, it's a near guarantee that some, if not a majority of them, will not live up to the expectations set by the fan base on a new offense. Well, yes, it is pretty much guaranteed every year that these guys will not live up to the expectations of the fan base because the fan base expectations are never realistic. Like, that's the thing. You can't, that's why I laugh a lot of times. And that's why I put out the tweet asking, what are your expectations? Because I just want to know, are they realistic or are they not realistic? And I did a show on Monday on Bleacher Report, pretty much asking people like what their expectations were for the Panthers win total this season. And people were saying, I'm like either like 6 to 7 or from 7 to 9. So, and the majority of people said between 6 and 7. And I was like, okay, cool. I have a realistic crowd here with me today. And I think that the majority of people are pretty level-headed. The set of the fan base that is just over on Twitter is not the majority of the fan base, as I understand. And that can be an echo chamber that is great sometimes, but the last couple of years has been, yikes, get me the hell away from that a lot of times. But I love y'all, of course. But yeah, I mean, fans get mad because they build players and they build the team up to be what they're really not. And then when they don't meet that expectation, they get ticked off. It's a little bit different if the NFL is saying, and Vegas is saying, really, that this team's going to have a 10.5, 11.5 win total. When they're saying it's 5.5, I don't really know why you'd be building anybody up to be anything more than what they've been before. Like, we have seen Deontay Johnson be a Pro Bowler. So I don't think it's crazy to think that he can be a Pro Bowler again when all the expectations have been placed that he's going to be the X, he's going to be the first read, and he's going to get a lot of opportunities. Chuba Hubbard had 900 rushing yards last year. I don't think it's crazy to think and expect he can have 1,000 rushing yards this season based off of the fact that they have a better offensive line and they want to run the ball and be stubborn about it. Like, those are realistic expectations, and those are things I guess you can be upset about if the Panthers, or at least those players individually, aren't able to reach them. As far as my thought about what it defines a successful season for the wide receiver this year, it's, well, one, them staying healthy. It's 2, them catching the ball. Well, sorry. It's 1, staying healthy. It's 2, getting open. It's 3, catching the ball. It's 4, doing something once they catch the ball. Those are things they could not do last year. At least, well, they did the first one. They were relatively healthy. It just was the getting open part, the catching the ball part, and then doing something with it once they caught it. That was the issue for this wide receiver core a year ago. I think successful season looks like Deontay Johnson proving to be a Pro Bowl caliber receiver once again with a competent quarterback and an offensive line that protects that quarterback. I also think it's Adam Thielen having another successful season. Is it having 100 receptions, 1,000 yards? I don't think so. If it's 70 and 700, I think that looks good on paper. It's Jonathan Mingo showing that with a year of experience and offseason and getting another opportunity in a new system, that he is somebody the Panthers can work with at least as their number 3 in the future. And of course, for Xavier Legette, him getting healthy, getting up to speed, showing that speed, and showing that, all right, you have something here in the future. Maybe not right away, but you got something here to work on down the road. And every rookie, it's varying. This was a lot of wide receivers were taken in the first round, y'all. A lot of them. And he was the last one taken. So everyone's going to have a different expectation. I think that success looks like Johnson doing exactly what he was paid to do, Thielen doing exactly what he did last year, but to a lesser extent, Mingo actually improving, Legette showing you why the Panthers drafted him in the first round. Doesn't have to show the great numbers, but showing, okay, I get it. I see what they were thinking here about this guy. That's success to me. Original Hog, as I did not get his name, but that's his Twitter account. He's an Arkansas fan, Woo Pig. The Hogs are 1-0. He said, how do you rank your hatred for our NFC South rivals? Mine has always been New Orleans, Atlanta, then Tampa, from most hated to least hated. I gotta guess that the majority of this fan base hates the Falcons the most, as they are our I-85 rivals, our city rival. If you buy into that, I mean, Atlanta's fine. Like, I enjoy going to Atlanta for a period of time. My sister lives down there in Atlanta. Check out Bomb Biscuits, by the way, if you're ever down there. Free advertisement. You're welcome, Erica. She doesn't need me to advertise anything for her. She's killing it. But yeah, I mean, I enjoy going to Atlanta. But like for a weekend, I would never want to live there. Traffic's terrible, but it's only going to get even worse here in Carolina as we can't get our transit plan figured out. Let's not get political. Let's move on here, Julian. But yeah, the Falcons would be number one. Their fans are annoying. Like, I hate the Falcons, not necessarily. The fans are annoying. And when they blew the 28-3 lead, like I kind of did feel bad for the players because that's just brutal. I just thought it was hilarious that all these Falcon fans, this whole dirty bird nonsense that they were doing all those years growing up in Charlotte. Like, I was happy to watch them lose. New Orleans, all those years of having Sean Payton, like that guy, extremely punchable face. I know that's how everybody views him. It was good to see him lose and then leave. And here's one thing though, like I love Roman Harper. It's my guy. He played for the Panthers. We become friends, and God, I like that makes me not hate the Saints a lot. And like, I don't really hate New Orleans. It's like Atlanta's only team. I'm just like, Tampa. I feel like this is how everybody feels. In the NFC South, I think we're all aware that New Orleans and Atlanta, like those two fan bases, hate each other a ton. Does anyone care about Tampa? Like, have you ever, maybe when they had Brady, but like, have you really ever cared about Tampa Bay? I've never felt anything about Tampa Bay. It's Atlanta, it's New Orleans, and I guess Tampa's there. So I'll flip flop mine to yours, original hog. And I'm guessing because you live in Arkansas, you're around a lot more Saints fans than I am on a daily basis or just ever. That's probably why you feel that way. Just guessing. All right, that's going to wrap up this edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, part of Locked On Podcast Network. Hosted by yours, Julian Council. Again, y'all subscribe or follow the show free on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. And be sure to follow me, Julian Council, on Twitter at Julian Council, where again next Wednesday I'll be back answering your weekly Wednesday mailbag questions and telling you that, yes, I want to see this team win games opposed to drafting in the top 5. So either at me or DM me to get those questions in for next week's show. But in the meantime, be safe, be happy, be whole. As always, keep pounding. And on tomorrow's show, the weekly Thursday crossover is back here on Locked On Panthers and Locked On NFL. Be sitting down with Ross Jackson of the Locked On Saints. Tell him how the Saints, they ain't going to win that game. Who that is going to be the Saints? The Carolina Panthers. That's who that is.